If you ever feel a storm coming before you see the clouds, that's how that night started for me. The Richardson house was alive with the smells of roasted turkey, sweet potatoes, and spiced cider. It was supposed to be a celebration, my wife Emma's birthday combined with an early Thanksgiving family gathering. A dozen people packed into that suburban home laughing, sipping wine, unaware that the ground was already splitting beneath their feet. I stood there in the foyer for a moment, my hands tightening around the gift bag I brought, not the real gift, not the one burning a hole in my pocket, that one was tucked away inside my jacket. A small black USB drive. It was surreal walking into the party, smiling and shaking hands, knowing I was about to tear everything apart. Emma floated through the room like she always did, the perfect hostess. Her laugh hit all the right notes and her arm brushed mine like she was still mine. But to me, every smile she gave was a knife. I caught glimpses of the others, her parents, her sister Danielle and her boyfriend Mark, even my own brother Sam and his wife, ordinary people in an ordinary house on an ordinary night. They had no idea they were about to witness a public execution of our marriage, of the illusion we'd sold to the world. "Hey, man, you good?" Sam clapped me on the back, knocking me a little off balance. "Yeah, I lied. Just tired." He chuckled, oblivious, and handed me a beer. I took it but barely sipped. My heart was pacing itself for what was coming. Dinner was called. We crammed around the long wooden table, plates piled high, the air thick with the warmth of family, tradition, and polite conversation. It was Danielle, always the nosy one, who set it off without realizing. "Emma, show everyone the slideshow. You were working on it all week, right?" Emma's eyes darted to me for a half second, just a flicker, but it was enough that I cleared my throat. "Actually, I've got something to show first." The room quieted, forks clinked onto plates. Emma stiffened beside me, but I didn't look at her. I pulled the small remote out of my pocket, feeling its weight like a trigger. With a click, the TV on the far wall lit up. For a second, it showed a black screen, then, a grainy hotel hallway, Emma stepping out of an elevator, laughing, her hand sliding into another man's, a man I recognized all too well. Mark. Danielle's boyfriend. My wife's secret. The room froze, you could hear a napkin drop. Emma shot to her feet. "What the hell are you doing, Jack?" she hissed, her face draining of color. I stayed seated, my voice steady but cold. "Just showing the family a few memories." Mark stammered something, his chair scraping backward. The video continued, Emma and Mark entering a hotel room, the timestamp flashing in the corner, the betrayal flashing even louder. My mother gasped. Danielle's mouth fell open, Sam muttered under his breath, "Holy hell." Emma lunged for the remote, but I stood first, towering over her. "Don't," I said, voice low enough that only she could hear it. "Let them see you, let them really see you." She froze, trembling. For the first time, I saw fear in her, not of me, but of the truth finally choking its way into the light. Someone at the table, I think it was her father, whispered, "Is this real?" I turned to the room. "It's real, every second of it." Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. Danielle was staring at him like she'd never seen him before, because she hadn't, not really. "How long?" Danielle croaked, her voice breaking. Mark couldn't answer, Emma couldn't either. Their silence screamed louder than any confession. I clicked the remote again, freezing the screen on an image that would haunt me forever. Emma's face laughing into Mark's shoulder. I felt my heart crack clean through, but I didn't let it show, not yet. "Enjoy the meal," I said, tossing the remote onto the table. Then I walked out the front door into the cold night, the sound of shouting erupting behind me like the house itself was imploding. I hadn't made it halfway down the driveway when I heard the crash, glass shattering, furniture scraping, raised voices. It all blurred into a roar behind me, a dam finally bursting. "Jack!" It was Emma, shrieking my name, her heels clicking across the porch as she stumbled after me. I kept walking. The night air was cold, but my blood was hotter than ever. The betrayal replayed in my mind on a vicious loop, her hands on him, her laugh, the way she had smiled like it was all some grand joke. "Jack, wait, please," she cried, grabbing at my jacket sleeve. I turned, slowly, deliberately, and for the first time in a long time, I looked her dead in the eyes, not the way a husband looks at his wife, but the way a man looks at a stranger who burned down his house and smiled while doing it. Mark barreled out onto the porch, his face flushed, nostrils flaring like some idiot who thought this was his moment to be the hero. "You had no right to do that," he barked, chest puffed like a rooster. I laughed once, sharp, bitter. "No right, no right?" My voice cracked through the quiet street like a whip. You slept with my wife under my roof. At my table. At family gatherings, while you smiled at me across the grill, and you think I have no right? Neighbors' porch lights flicked on up and down the street, curtains shifted, the whole damn neighborhood was waking up to the show. Mark stepped forward, full of dumb bravado. You wanna hit me? Go ahead, man. Go ahead, be the bad guy. Bad guy, that word sat there between us like a dare, and I took it. Before he could open that smug mouth again, my fist connected with his jaw, hard that he staggered back, slipping on the wet leaves, hitting the ground with a heavy thud that shook the porch. Jack, stop! Emma screamed, rushing to him. She knelt down, hands fluttering uselessly over Mark like a frantic bird. For a second, she looked up at me, hatred, fear, and shame warring across her face. Good, let her feel it, let her feel something. From the doorway, Danielle was crying, her mother holding her back. Sam came running up the walk, grabbing my arm. Jack, hey, come on, man, that's enough. But it wasn't enough, not by a long shot. You think I'm the bad guy? I said, my voice shaking with rage as I pointed at the two of them huddled there like victims. Take a good look, everybody, take a good damn look at the liars you invited into your homes, into your lives. Nobody said a word, even the wind seemed to die. Mark groaned on the porch, cradling his face. Emma wiped at her eyes, ruining her makeup, looking like a ghost of the woman I once loved. I stood there, my chest heaving, feeling a chasm open up beneath my feet. The life I had built, the trust, the family gatherings, the quiet Sunday mornings, all of it had been a lie. I could see it now, clear as crystal. The way Emma avoided my eyes lately, the whispered phone calls when she thought I was asleep, the sudden girl trips that always left her glowing when she came back, all the puzzle pieces snapping together into one hideous picture. Sam squeezed my arm harder. Come on, bro, let's go, nothing left for you here. I looked once more at Emma, the woman who swore she'd love me forever, and saw her for what she really was, not a mistake, not a lost soul. A choice. She had chosen this. I yanked my arm free, took a long breath that burned in my lungs, and turned away. As I walked back toward my truck, I heard Emma's voice again, weak and desperate. Jack, please, don't do this. I didn't even look back. You already did, I said over my shoulder. The truck door slammed behind me with a finality that sounded like the closing of a coffin. As I drove away, the porch lights and chaos faded into the rearview mirror, swallowed by the night. But inside, the rage, the betrayal, they burned bright. They weren't fading anytime soon, and neither was the decision I knew I'd have to make, forgive, or finally set myself free. I drove for miles without knowing where I was going. The dashboard lights blurred into the darkness beyond the windshield, the heater hummed low, but I still felt cold, that kind of cold that starts somewhere inside your chest and spreads out until you can't tell if you're shivering or just breaking apart one piece at a time. Somewhere around midnight I pulled into a near-empty strip mall parking lot and killed the engine. The silence hit like a fist. No soft voice from the passenger seat. No laughing. No hand reaching for mine across the console, just me, and the kind of loneliness that doesn't just sit beside you, it sinks into your bones. I stared at the cracked asphalt under the flickering streetlights, trying to remember where exactly it all went wrong. Maybe it was that first time I caught her smiling at her phone and she tucked it away too quickly. Maybe it was the way she started wearing perfume again, long after she'd said she couldn't be bothered. Or maybe it was even earlier, little tiny betrayals, too small to notice, stacking up like termite damage under the surface of a house that looks perfectly fine until the day it collapses. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. For a minute, it was easy to pretend, easy to imagine I was pulling into the driveway of the home we built together, and that Emma was waiting inside, barefoot, smiling, scolding me for being late again. But I couldn't hold the lie long. Reality came crashing back. Like a wave, her laughter in that hotel video, her hands on Mark, the smirk on his face. I slammed my fist into the steering wheel, the pain radiating up my arm, sharp, immediate, welcome, good, I thought, let it hurt so I don't forget. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough for the cold to creep deeper, long enough for the anger to dull into something heavier, more exhausted. When I finally got out of the truck, I walked. No destination, no plan, just the rhythmic crunch of my boots on the empty sidewalks, the way my breath misted in the freezing air. I passed dark storefronts, shuttered diners, gas stations with buzzing neon lights. Somewhere off in the distance, a train wailed, that long, lonely sound you only hear when the world's asleep. I thought about what Sam had said before I left the house. Nothing left for you here. Maybe he was right that I thought about forgiveness, about all the times Emma had forgiven my small mistakes, forgotten birthdays, arguments I should have handled better, nights I worked too late. Was it the same? Was this just a mistake? Or was it something deeper, uglier, a choice she'd made again and again, every time she texted him back, every time she lied, every time she crossed a line and told herself it didn't count, that I sat down on a frozen bench outside a boarded-up movie theater and stared at the cracked pavement. How do you forgive someone who buried a knife in your back and smiled while doing it? And even if you could forgive, how do you ever trust them again? The answer sat heavy in my chest, thick and certain. You don't. You can't rebuild a house once the foundation's rotted. You can slap fresh paint on it, hang new curtains, but underneath, the whole damn thing will collapse. The first time it rains that I pulled my phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over her number, half of me wanted to call .to. Scream.to, beg for an explanation that would never come. The other half of me, the half I knew I had to listen to, just deleted her contact, not blocked, not silenced, erased. That I stood up, my breath curling in the frigid air. The night around me was vast, cold, and utterly empty, but for the first time in a long time I wasn't the one lying to myself, and in that cold emptiness, maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. A path without her. I don't remember driving to my dad's place. 1 minute I was sitting on that frozen bench, the next I was pulling into the gravel driveway of the old farmhouse he refused to leave. No matter how many times we tried to convince him, the porch light was still on, like he somehow knew I'd be coming. Dad opened the door before I even knocked. 1 look at my face, and he just stepped aside, no questions. "Coffee's on," he said simply, voice rough from years of smoke and stubbornness. That I nodded, stepping inside, the warm, familiar smell of wood smoke and old books washing over me. For a second, it almost broke me. This was what home was supposed to feel like, not the cold emptiness I left behind tonight. That we sat in the kitchen, steam curling up from chipped mugs. That he waited until I spoke first. "She cheated," I said. The words felt heavy, like gravel in my throat. Dad didn't flinch. That he just nodded once, slow, like he'd already figured that much. "Thought maybe," he said. "Saw that look in your eyes, same one I had back in '86. I looked up, startled. That he smiled grimly. "Your mom wasn't perfect either, kiddo. Difference is, we found our way back. Hard road, not everyone makes it." I sat there, staring into the black coffee, feeling like I was 10 years old again, trying to figure out the right answer on a test no one had prepared me for. "I don't know if I can," I finally said. "I don't know if I even want to." Dad leaned back in his chair, the old wood creaking under his weight. "You could try," he said. "You could forgive her, fight for it, patch it up with duct tape and prayer." He paused, leveling those steel-gray eyes at me. "But son, you gotta ask yourself, what kind of marriage would you be saving?" That hit harder than I wanted to admit. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister, Claire. "Heard what happened, come over if you need." I left Dad's a little after 2 a.m., promising to call him once I slept. Instead, I ended up at Claire's townhouse across town. She answered the door in sweats, hair tied back, no makeup, and hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. "You idiot," she muttered into my shoulder, voice breaking. "You didn't deserve this." Inside, she made hot chocolate, because that's what Claire did in a crisis, and sat cross-legged on the couch like we were kids again. "So," she said, "what now?" I shook my head. "I don't know. That I keep running it through my head. What if I messed up too? What if I pushed her away somehow?" Claire's face darkened. "No," she said firmly. "Don't you dare carry her sins." "But marriage isn't simple," I argued weakly. "I wasn't perfect, no one is," she cut in. "But you didn't choose betrayal, she did. She made that choice every damn time she picked him over you." I slumped back against the couch, drained. Everything she said made sense, but part of me, the broken, desperate part, still clung to hope that there was some version of this story where I didn't lose everything, hope that if I just forgave, just worked harder, I could fix what was shattered. "You can stay," Claire said softly. "As long as you need. No pressure. No judgment." I nodded, my throat thick with emotion. She squeezed my hand once. "Jack, sometimes loving yourself means walking away." That night, lying on her lumpy pull-out couch, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead, chasing the same damn question in circles. Was I strong enough to leave, Or was I still that fool sitting at the table, hoping a broken woman would somehow put the pieces back together for me? By dawn, I still didn't have the answer. But I knew one thing, the man who walked into that family dinner wasn't the same man who sat here now, and ready or not, change was coming. If pain had a sound, it would be silence. That kind of silence was all I had the next few days, sleeping on Claire's couch, going through the motions, ignoring the flood of texts from Emma I refused to open, that I stayed busy, that I stayed numb, that I thought, stupidly, that the worst was already behind me. Until Mark called, that I didn't recognize the number. Should have let it go to voicemail. Should have thrown the damn phone into the river, but I answered at first. There was just heavy breathing on the other end, then Mark's voice, strained, almost frantic. "Jack," he said, "you need to know something." I stayed silent, jaw locked tight. "I screwed up," he continued. "Yeah, I messed up with Emma, but it wasn't just me, man." I blinked, cold seeping into my veins. "What the hell are you talking about?" "There were others," he said. "She's been doing this for a while, not just me." The world tilted. "You're lying," I said flatly, but even as the words came out, I knew he wasn't. The night of the family dinner flashed in my mind. The panic in Emma's eyes wasn't just shame, that it was fear of how much more could come out. "I thought it was just a mistake between us," Mark said miserably. "But after it all blew up, I started hearing stuff, and Jack," he hesitated. "I think you should look into a guy named Travis, works at her gym, and maybe also Evan, from her office." I didn't say anything. Didn't curse him out. Didn't threaten him. I just hung up. That night, I sat alone at a cheap diner nursing cold coffee and staring at the rain sliding down the window. Lightning forked the sky, illuminating the sinking feeling in my gut that it couldn't be true. Not Emma, not the woman I fought for, slept beside, built a life with, and yet, I thought about all the nights she came home late, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, the girls' trips that never added up, the sudden new clothes, the nervous energy when I asked simple questions. I didn't want to believe it, but I'd made that mistake once already. I left the diner and drove. I didn't even think, it was pure instinct, heading toward the places I never dared check before. Emma's gym, the parking lot was half empty when I pulled in, rain misting against the windshield, but through the glass windows I spotted her, laughing, talking to some guy. Tall, broad-shouldered, too familiar, not Mark, someone else. I watched, gut twisting, as she touched his arm lightly, the same way she used to touch mine when we were still real. They moved closer, too close. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, snapped a picture. For a minute, I sat there with the engine idling, breathing hard, willing myself not to storm in there and make a scene, because what would it change? It wouldn't unbreak what was already shattered. I drove off before I could do something stupid. Back at Claire's, I sat in the truck for a long time, staring at the photo I'd taken. There she was, my wife, not grieving, not broken, laughing, like none of this mattered, like our life, our vows, our dreams had been nothing more than an old jacket she shrugged off when it stopped fitting right. I finally understood. Emma wasn't lost, she wasn't confused, she was gone, and the woman who remained, she wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never really was. I didn't call first. Didn't text. I just drove straight to the house we once called ours. Emma was home. I could see her car in the driveway, right where it always sat. Like nothing had changed, like she hadn't burned everything to the ground. I stood there on the porch for a second, feeling the weight of it all pressed down on me, the years, the promises. The 1,000 little sacrifices I made believing we were building something real. I knocked once, firm, final, the door swung open and there she was, Emma, hair pulled back. No makeup, sweats and an old hoodie. For a moment, she looked like the woman I married, but when she spoke, the illusion broke. "Jack," she breathed. "Thank God that I've been trying to reach you." She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. "No," I said, voice low, unshakable. "Don't." She flinched like I'd slapped her. We stood there in the dim entryway, the rain dripping off my jacket onto the hardwood floor. The house smelled like vanilla candles, her usual tactic when she wanted to set a mood, but it just made me nauseous now. "I just want to talk," she pleaded. "I can explain." I laughed once, bitter and hollow. "You think there's an explanation for this?" I asked, holding up my phone, the photo of her cozying up to the gym guy on full display. She froze, the color drained from her face. "Jack, it's not what it looks like," she said weakly. I stared at her. You know, I said slowly, the saddest part is that you're still lying, even now, when there's nothing left to protect. Her lip trembled, but she didn't say anything. First Mark, I said, stepping closer, feeling the rage simmer under my skin but controlling it now, like a weapon I refused to use recklessly. Then Travis. Maybe Evan too, who knows how many others. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't moved anymore. You had 1,000 chances to stop, I said, voice breaking despite myself. 1,000 moments you could have chosen us. She crumpled into a chair, head in her hands. I didn't mean for it to happen, she sobbed that I knelt down in front of her, not to comfort her, but to make damn sure she heard every word. You didn't trip and fall into someone else's arms, Emma, I said. You chose it, every text, every secret meeting, every lie you whispered while you looked me in the eye. She wept harder now, ugly, broken sounds, and maybe, a long time ago, that would have gutted me, but tonight I just felt tired. So damn tired that I stood up, pulling the folded papers from my jacket pocket. She stared up at me, mascara streaking down her cheeks, trembling. What's that? She choked out that I tossed the divorce papers onto the coffee table between us. Freedom, I said. For both of us. She grabbed the papers with shaking hands, flipping through them. No, Jack, wait, please, she begged. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. I shook my head slowly. You don't get it, I said. I'm not angry anymore. She looked confused, hopeful even, but I crushed that hope with the truth. I'm done. The words felt like stepping through a doorway into fresh air after years of breathing smoke. You made your choices, Emma, I said, heading for the door. Now I'm making mine. I didn't slam the door behind me. That I didn't shout. That I didn't look back. That I walked into the rain, feeling the cold soak through my clothes. But for the first time in months, I didn't care. Out here, in the storm, I was free, and whatever waited for me next, it was mine to build. No lies, no ghosts, no Emma, just me, and the open road ahead. The divorce papers were signed 2 weeks later. It was a cold Friday morning when I walked into my lawyer's office, a modest little building downtown with creaky wood floors and the faint smell of old books and coffee. That I wore my best jacket, not because anyone would care, but because I wanted to feel like a man who hadn't been broken, just rebuilt differently. Lisa, my lawyer, slid the stack of documents across the table. Final review, Jack, she said, her voice kind but steady. You sure you're ready for this? I nodded. Didn't even hesitate, pen in hand, I scrawled my name on the final page. A simple act, so small, but in that moment, it felt like a door slamming shut behind me, and somewhere deep inside another door opening. Lisa stood, offering her hand. Congratulations, she said with a knowing smile. You're free. I shook her hand, the pen still warm between my fingers. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing alone on a wide open road. The past behind you, the horizon ahead. It felt terrifying and beautiful. I walked out into the winter air, the sun just starting to break through the gray clouds. The chill bit into my skin, but for once I welcomed it. I was alive. Bruised, changed, but alive. I didn't go back to Claire's. Didn't drive by the house where Emma still slept in the wreckage of her own making. I went to a small diner on the edge of town instead, one of those places with cracked leather booths and old rock music humming from a dusty jukebox. I ordered coffee and eggs, slid into a booth by the window, and watched the world move on without me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel left behind. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I pulled out my phone and started a new note. No more messages to Emma. No more checking her social media. No more replaying old arguments like they were worth something. This time, it was for me. I titled it simply Rules for the Man I'm Becoming. And I started to write, never beg someone to stay, love when it's real, walk away when it's not, trust your gut, it knows, protect your peace like it's oxygen, choose yourself without apology. The words came easier than I expected. It wasn't about revenge. Wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about finally choosing myself, about taking every scar, every betrayal, and using them like stepping stones out of the wreckage. I paid my bill, left a good tip, and walked back into the brightening morning. No regrets. No looking back, just forward, always forward. And as I got into my truck, I realized something. The marriage had ended, but my life was just getting started.